Donald Best, a man who's been on the inside. He's worked with the Toronto Police. He's also the sole recipient of the 2018 Ontario Civil Liberties Award. Donald Best, thank you very much for joining here on Times Now. My question to you is pretty straightforward at this time because many people are looking at what's happened in Canada, the attack on the Hindu temple. I just want to ask you, can you tell us about this off-duty Canadian policeman who was part of this violent protest? How do you know that he is an off-duty policeman going by the name of Harinder Sohi?
Yes, he's a sergeant, and this has been confirmed to me personally in writing by the Peel Regional Police. The officer has been suspended, and it's probably with pay under our rules here. But this is a very serious situation when we have police officers who are supposed to represent the entire community throwing in their lot with one political group or one religious group, and at this protest, which turned violent. And as we heard from our good friend Mocha, who is another journalist in Canada, has covered this extensively, including the representations by certain Sikh groups in organized crime. Mocha has covered that very well. But this has been confirmed. So the question is, if this sergeant, he's a senior police officer of many years, has involved himself now with a protest that turned violent, which really was an attack upon a place of religious worship, how can he now serve the entire community? How can people trust him when he goes to a Hindu couple or a Catholic couple or whatever? How can we trust him now that he has put this as a priority? I just don't understand the man's thinking. This is frankly disgusting.
I've seen screenshots. You've shared with us the screenshots of the email that you've received from Peeve Police. What are the details that they have shared and divulged about this man you call the sergeant level police officer?
Right. Well, they've confirmed that it is him. They've confirmed that he has been suspended. Many people recognized him at the protest and sent me, well, I suppose several dozen videos. Now, he was holding a Khalistani flag. At another time, he was holding an American flag. And while he was holding that there, in that photo there, he's holding, that's from a video. And Sergeant, I think it's pronounced Sohi, it's S-O-H-I. And he's holding a Khalistani flag, but at the same time, the crowd is chanting that the Indian government are terrorists. So we have a police officer holding a Khalistani flag and smiling and moving his lips. Obviously, you can't hear what he's saying, but the crowd is chanting that the Indian government are terrorists, is terrorists. So how can he continue to be a police officer?
So is this the blatant proof of how institutions have been infiltrated by these Khalistani sympathizers, and the fact that the Trudeau government literally probably is accused of harboring such individuals inside the government institutions?
Well, as you know, our largest terror attack ever in Canada was the Air India bombing. So many people killed. And that was people who lived in Canada were involved in that. And lately, we've had so much immigration and too much immigration in such a short period of time in Canada. Depending on who you listen to, 1.5 million or 2 million people for a country that, you know, I mean, that's a very high percentage of our population. So we've had this, and many of them have been Khalistani sympathizers. That's just the reality. And they've taken over. Many local politicians have been elected, and provincially and nationally too. The leader of one of the opposition parties is a Sikh, and I believe, I've heard he's not allowed into India, so I don't know. But I can tell you that Canadians are getting very tired, very weary of infighting in Canada from people who come to Canada. Now, you have to understand, for 100 years, we've had people from all over the world, and yes, some of the people have been at war and have problems with other people, but when we get to Canada, we like to think that we at least try and get together and get along together in this new country. But this is not happening with the, frankly, with the Sikhs and the trouble between the Hindus and the Sikhs and the Indian government. It's just every day, every week, and Canadians are very tired of it. Plus the fact, it has been alleged, and we've seen much of it, that there is undue influence by Khalistan supporters at various levels of government. And I think that's a pretty fair statement. As I say, the journalist Mocha Bezagan that you had on before has done extensive research and really solid work, good evidence about the infiltration of Khalistan supporters into organized crime and government in Canada.
So let me correct you there, Mr. Donald. Sikhs and Hindus are very close in India. There's not much difference between them. It's actually these Khalistani separatist supporters who want to divide India, who are a completely different tribe, a smaller group of, militant separatist ideology. To call them Sikhs would be a travesty of justice, the manner in which Sikhs and Hindus have been in India. But let me ask you, have the police reverted to you on the specific role of Mr. Sohai?
No, we can see online that he has been very high profile in the community in general, and of course with the Indian community. And I want to say that I do understand that many Sikhs are against the Khalistan movement and such. I know that. But whether we talk Sikh or whether we talk Khalistan supporters, there have been documented instances of these groups, both of them, if you want to call them two different groups, with organized crime. Obviously, there was a couple of murders in Canada that the Canadian government even accused the Indian government of being involved in. And the situation is very confusing to those of us who really don't know India and know the politics and such. Just as probably if we asked you about Quebec separatists or Alberta separatists, that's it.
Fair enough. But question that I want to ask you, you've been inside the police force. Do you think this phenomenon of such elements entering institutions in Canada is a relatively new, is relatively new in terms of its antecedents? And how deep is the rot? Can you give us an idea about that?
Back in the 1980s, one of my jobs was to do internal investigations into police corruption. And we always saw organized crime trying to infiltrate the police. At that time, it was Italian organized crime, and then we saw Chinese and Vietnamese organized crime trying to infiltrate the police. This has gone on forever, and it still goes on, motorcycle gangs and such. So the answer is yes. People who are, some people who sympathize with the Khalistani movement or even the terrorists, yes, of course, they're in the police service. And here is the proof of one. This man that held the Khalistani flag, while such acts of violence were going on, he was in neglect of duty. As a police officer, even if you're off duty and you see violence, you must stop it. He has a duty, but he ignored that duty, and he put support of this group that has been involved in terror attacks. He put that first. He cannot continue to be a police officer, in my opinion.
Do you think action will be taken against him, or are we seeing this suspension as a one-off, step that has been taken, and once time passes, things will go back to normal?
Well, that depends on what you mean back to normal. He has a security clearance, and now he certainly couldn't be approved for any security clearance for anything to do in the Indian community, now that he is associated with this terrorist organization. So I don't think that the police, I'm guessing here, they'd like it all to blow over. They've suspended him. They're doing an investigation. I really don't see how this can end any other way but his resignation. I really don't see it. The community would be outraged if this man were allowed to stay as a police officer.
Let me also ask you, do you believe the Trudeau government has accommodated such elements for far too long?
Yes, absolutely yes. Not only in the Khalistani movement and those who believe in terror and such, but in many other communities too, including they've looked the other way with Chinese espionage and influence in Canada. The Trudeau government has been, I have to say, they have not put Canada and Canadians first. I think they've been lining their pockets, and I don't think they care about national security.
And do you think this is purely based on vote bank considerations, including the need to appease or placate Jagmeet Singh of the NDP?
I think that's a big part of it. Jagmeet Singh, of course, holds the balance of power, and he could have taken down, it's basically a coalition government, and he and his New Democratic Party could have taken down the Trudeau government at any time, but they won't do it. And frankly, it's a personal reason, because Mr. Singh doesn't get his pension until October of 2025. So everybody knows he'll just keep supporting the Trudeau government. As much as he rants and raves about their policy not being to his liking, he'll stay because he's, lining his pocket.
So let me ask you, Donald, the question tonight is, was Harinder Sohai suspended suo motu on their own by the police authorities, or were videos of him, doing the rounds just so virally that they were forced to take action and not look the other way?
I think that's absolutely true, and it shows the role of smaller and independent journalists and of the new media. You're ahead of this story because it really interests you. In Canada, this story isn't even hitting the legacy media yet. It still hasn't hit it. But here we are talking about it. We're ahead of the news. I think that independent media is bringing truth to people around the world that they never had before.
Well, clearly, kudos to independent media. Kudos to you for raising this issue with the authorities. Kudos to you for following up those questions and the email trail where the police have themselves actually acknowledged to you the suspension of Harinder Sohai, a sergeant level police officer. Do you think a suspension is enough?
No, I don't. I think he should be fired. And I think that this will eventually end with his resignation. If they don't, I don't see how, I really don't see how he can continue to function with the trust of the broad community, of everybody in the community, when he has been associated with an attack on a place of worship. Can't do it.
Well said. Thank you very much, Donald Best, and you truly are the best. And thank you for sharing those insights with us. Clearly, we're following this story because attacks on Hindu temples, on Hindu devotees have become pretty commonplace in Canada. And with the latest withdrawal of our diplomats from Canada, the spotlight is on Canada and how justice will be done, and the Trudeau government will take action against elements for such violence that has been targeting just worshippers going to a temple. Thank you very much, Donald Best. We'll continue to keep coming back to you to get more updates on this story, and more power to the independent media, bringing us up to date with all that's happening on this matter in Canada.
Thanks. You have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.